In medieval Europe, there was one profession that followed your bloodline like a curse. If your father held this job, you would hold it. If you married, your wife would be shunned. If you had children, they would be banned from every guild, every trade, every church pew. Your family could only marry other families who carried the same shame. And the name you were given, or the name that was given to you, would mark your descendants for centuries. That profession was executioner. And there are people alive today, in Germany, in France, in England, in Spain, in the Americas, who carry surnames that trace directly to an ancestor who killed for a living, legally, publicly, and by order of the state. These are 10 of those names. Some are obvious, some are disguised, and some belong to dynasties that executed kings. Number 10. Hangman. There is no subtlety here, no code, no hidden meaning. The surname Hangman and its variants Hangman, Hangman, exists in English parish records dating to the 14th century. It is exactly what it sounds like, the family name given to or taken by the man whose occupation was hanging convicted criminals. In medieval England, the hangman was not a permanent government employee in most towns. He was hired per execution. In smaller towns, he was often a criminal himself. A condemned man offered a reprieve in exchange for executing his fellow prisoners. This is how many executioner lines began. Not with a career choice, but with a deal made under the shadow of the same gallows. The hangman was not allowed to live within the city walls in many jurisdictions. He could not enter a tavern through the front door. If he touched a merchant's goods at market, those goods were considered contaminated and had to be discarded. He was, in the eyes of medieval society, a necessary evil, legally protected but socially annihilated. The surname Hangman is rare today. Most families who carried it changed it centuries ago, but it still appears in genealogical records across England, and every instance traces back to one thing: an ancestor who held the rope. Number 9. Angstman. In German, Angst means fear, man means man, the fear man, the man who brings fear. This was not a name executioner families chose for themselves. It was the name the village gave them. In the German-speaking territories of the Holy Roman Empire, hundreds of small principalities, duchies, and free cities, each with its own legal system, the executioner was referred to by many regional terms. In some areas, he was called the Nachrichter, the one who carries out the judge's sentence. In others, he was the Scharfrichter, the sharp judge. But in the communities where people spoke plainly, he was simply the Angstman, the man you feared. The surname Angstman survives in German-speaking Europe today. Most of the people who carry it have no connection to the medieval profession. But the name itself was born in a time when the executioner's family was identifiable on sight, marked by where they lived, where they sat in church, and what name their neighbors called them when they passed. The next entry is the name given to executioners who stood outside the social order entirely, men who belonged to no class, no guild, and no community. Number 8. Fryman. Fry means free, man means man, the free man. This sounds like a compliment. It was not. In the legal framework of the Holy Roman Empire, the Fryman was free in the worst possible sense, free from the social contract. He belonged to no guild. He owed no feudal obligation. He was exempt from the taxes and duties that connected every other citizen to their community. And in exchange for that freedom, he performed the one function no respectable person would touch. The executioner was called Fryman because he existed outside the boundaries of normal society. He was legally free to perform acts that would condemn any other citizen to the very scaffold he operated. This legal exemption was not a privilege, it was a quarantine. The community freed the executioner from social obligation because it did not want him inside its social fabric. Fryman families across the German-speaking world lived on the outskirts of towns, often near the gallows or the Rabenstein, the Ravenstone, the execution site. Their children could not attend normal schools. Their daughters could not marry tradesmen. When a Fryman died, his body was often buried outside the churchyard because even in death the community refused to accept him. The surname Fryman exists today in Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. Behind it stands not freedom, but the most complete form of social exile medieval Europe ever invented. Number 7. Verdugo. In Spanish, Verdugo means executioner. Directly, literally. There is no ambiguity. The word derives from the Latin viridis, green. through the intermediate form Verdugo, referring to a green branch or switch used for flogging. Over time, the tool became the man. The switch became the one who wielded it. And the one who wielded it became a surname carried by approximately 73,000 people alive today, concentrated in Mexico, Chile, Spain, and the United States. During the medieval period in Castile, the Verdugo was a recognized public office. He carried out sentences of death by hanging, garroting, burning, and flogging. Unlike his German counterpart, the Spanish executioner was not always a social outcast. In some jurisdictions, he held a formal appointment and was granted certain privileges, including exemption from military service and the right to collect fees directly from the condemned. The surname Verdugo traveled to the Americas with the Spanish Empire. José María Verdugo, a Spanish corporal, was granted Rancho San Rafael in California in 1784, land that would later become the cities of Glendale, Burbank, and Eagle Rock. The Verdugo Mountains in Los Angeles County are named after his family. Most of the 73,000 people who carry the name Verdugo today have no idea that the word on their passport literally translates to the one who kills by order of the state. If you're watching this and learning something nobody ever told you about the name you carry, subscribe to Legacy Remains. We uncover the history hidden inside surnames. Hit subscribe, and the next video will already be waiting. Number 6. Nachrichter. Nach means after. Richter means judge. The after judge, the one who comes after the judge speaks. This was the formal bureaucratic title for the executioner in the German legal system. While Angstman was what the common people called him, Nachrichter was what the court documents called him. It appeared in judicial records, in municipal salary ledgers, in the official correspondence between city councils and the imperial government. The distinction mattered. The Nachrichter was not merely a killer, he was a legal instrument. The judge pronounced the sentence. The Nachrichter carried it out. Without him, the law had no teeth, and the medieval legal system knew this. In many German cities, the Nachrichter was paid a fixed salary, provided with a house near the execution site, and granted monopoly rights over certain trades that no respectable citizen would practice, including the disposal of animal carcasses, the cleaning of latrines, and the treatment of certain skin diseases. This last function is crucial. Because executioners handled bodies, living and dead, they developed anatomical knowledge that no other class possessed. Many Nachrichter families became, over generations, informal surgeons and healers. They set broken bones, they treated wounds, they sold medicines and ointments. The same hands that held the sword on the scaffold held surgical instruments in the back room. The surname Nachrichter still exists in German records. Behind it stands the paradox of medieval justice. The man the community could not touch was the same man the community could not survive without. Number 5. Ketch. In 1663, a man named John Ketch was appointed public executioner of London. Over the next 23 years, he would hang, behead, draw, and quarter hundreds of condemned prisoners at Tyburn and Tower Hill. He became the most famous executioner in English history, but not for his skill, for his incompetence. In 1683, Ketch was assigned to behead Lord William Russell, a prominent politician convicted of treason. The execution was catastrophic. Ketch struck Russell's neck and missed the mark. Russell reportedly looked up at him and said words to the effect of, "Did I pay you 10 guineas to butcher me?" Ketch struck again, and again. The crowd was horrified. 2 years later, Ketch was given an even more important execution. James Scott, Duke of Monmouth, who had led a failed rebellion against King James II. Monmouth reportedly begged Ketch to do a clean job. Ketch failed. It took at least 5 blows of the axe, and according to some accounts, Ketch had to finish the job with a knife. The public outrage was so extreme that the name Ketch became a synonym for executioner itself. For 2 centuries after his death, every hangman in England was called a Jack Ketch, regardless of his real name. The term entered the English language as a word for death, for the hangman, and for Satan. The surname Ketch exists today. Most bearers of the name have never heard of John Ketch, but for 200 years, their surname was the English word for the man who kills you. Number 4. Schmidt. Schmidt is one of the most common German surnames. It means smith, blacksmith. But one Schmidt, one specific man bearing this ordinary name, left behind a document so extraordinary that it reshaped how historians understand the executioner's world. Franz Schmidt was born in 1554 in Bamberg, Bavaria. His father Heinrich had been forced into the executioner's profession against his will, reportedly pressed into service by a local ruler who needed someone to perform an execution, and selected Heinrich at random. Once Heinrich carried out the act, he was marked. His family was marked, and his son Franz inherited the profession, whether he wanted it or not. Franz Schmidt served as executioner of Nuremberg from 1578 to 1617. In that time, he personally executed 361 people and administered corporal punishment, flogging, branding, finger amputation, ear removal, to hundreds more. And he wrote down every single one. Schmidt's journal, his Tagebuch, is one of the most remarkable documents to survive from the early modern period. Each entry records the crime, the criminal, the method of execution, and occasionally Schmidt's own observations. He notes when an execution went cleanly. He notes when it did not. He records moments of mercy, when he petitioned the court to commute a sentence, and moments of horror, like the execution of a woman who had murdered her infant. What makes Schmidt extraordinary is that he spent his entire career trying to escape the profession. In 1593, after decades of service, he petitioned the city council of Nuremberg to remove the stigma of dishonor from his family. He argued that his father had been forced into the role, that the disgrace was unjust, and that his faithful service entitled him to rehabilitation. The petition was denied. He petitioned again and again. In 1624, 7 years after his retirement, Emperor Ferdinand II finally granted Franz Schmidt and his descendants a formal declaration of honor, restoring his family to respectable status. Schmidt is a common surname, but Franz Schmidt's diary, the only detailed first-hand account of a working executioner's career, proves that the man behind the common name lived the most uncommon life imaginable. Number 3. Pierrepont. 3 generations, 1 profession, over 600 executions, and the most famous hangman in 20th century Britain. The Pierrepont family entered the execution business when Henry Albert Pierrepont became assistant executioner in 1901 and later chief executioner. His brother Thomas Pierrepont took over from 1910 to 1946, and Thomas's nephew Albert Pierrepont became the most prolific executioner in modern British history. Albert Pierrepont was appointed assistant executioner in 1932 and served until 1956. In that time, he is estimated to have executed over 400 people. Some estimates place the number as high as 600. His method was the long drop hanging, a precisely calculated rope length based on the prisoner's weight and height, designed to break the neck instantly. Pierrepont was so efficient that he reportedly completed some executions in less than 15 seconds, from the moment the prisoner entered the execution chamber. After World War II, Pierrepont was sent to Germany and Austria to execute over 200 convicted Nazi war criminals, including Irma Grese, a guard at Bergen-Belsen in Auschwitz, and Joseph Kramer, the commandant of Bergen-Belsen. He also executed several British traitors and German spies during the war itself. But the execution that changed Albert Pierrepont's mind about his profession was that of James Corbett in 1950, a man Pierrepont knew personally. Corbett was a regular at Pierrepont's pub in Oldham. They had sung duets together, and then Pierrepont was assigned to hang him for murder. In his autobiography, Pierrepont wrote that if anyone had a deterrent against murder, it was Corbett, the man who drank with his own executioner. The deterrent did not work, and Pierrepont concluded that capital punishment did not prevent crime. Carry the name Pierrepont, and you carry the last great executioner dynasty in the English-speaking world. A family whose final member turned against the very institution his bloodline had served for half a century. Number 2. Guillaume. Jean Guillaume became executioner of Paris in 1594. When he died, he had amassed enough wealth to be given an elaborate funeral, rare for a man of his profession. But his true legacy was not wealth, it was blood. Over the following 2 centuries, more than 200 executioners across France traced their lineage directly back to Jean Guillaume. His descendants did not merely serve Paris. They served Rouen, Lyon, Soissons, Dieppe, Reims, and dozens of other cities. They married each other. They trained each other's sons. They built a network of hereditary death that stretched across the entire Kingdom of France. The reason was endogamy, the practice of marrying exclusively within a social group. Because executioner families were banned from marrying outside their profession, the same surname circulated among them for generations. Guillaume's daughters married the sons of other executioner families. Guillaume's sons married the daughters of Hangman from neighboring provinces. The result was a web of intermarriage so dense that by the 18th century, virtually every executioner in France could trace his ancestry back to one man. The executioner's France was a shadow society, a parallel world of blood and blade that existed behind the spectacle of public justice. They had their own social hierarchy, they had their own customs, they had their own pride, and they had their own dynasty, founded by a man named Guillaume, whose genetic legacy would eventually place a blade against the neck of a king. Behind the name Guillaume, a name that simply means William in French, stands the single most consequential executioner dynasty in European history, the family whose descendants would include the Sansons. Number 1. Sanson. 6 generations, 159 years, nearly 3,000 executions, and the most dramatic moment in the history of capital punishment. The Sanson dynasty began in 1688 when Charles Sanson was appointed executioner of Paris. He had married Marguerite Juin, the daughter of the executioner of Dieppe, a woman from the Guillaume network. The marriage sealed his entry into the profession. It would not release his family for over a century and a half. Charles was succeeded by his son Charles, who was succeeded by his son Charles Jean-Baptiste, who was succeeded by his son Charles Henri. 4 generations of executioners, each training his son in the mechanics of death, the precise angle of the axe, the length of rope needed for a clean hanging, the art of the breaking wheel, tying a man to a wooden cartwheel and shattering his bones one by one with an iron hammer. But it was Charles Henri Sanson, the 4th generation, who became the most famous executioner in history. In April 1792, Charles Henri Sanson oversaw the testing and approval of a new execution device designed by Dr. Antoine Louis and promoted by Dr. Joseph Ignace Guillotine. It was called the Guillotine. Sanson tested it on straw bales, then on sheep, then on human corpses. He pronounced it a success. On April 25, 1792, he used it for the first time in public, executing a highway robber named Nicolas Jacques Pelletier. 8 months later, on January 21, 1793, Sanson stood on the scaffold at the Place de la Révolution in Paris. The man kneeling before him was Louis XVI, King of France. The crowd was enormous. The drums were rolling. Sanson released the blade. In the months that followed, Sanson and his son Henri executed wave after wave of revolutionaries, aristocrats, politicians, and ordinary citizens caught in the machinery of the terror. Marie Antoinette, Danton, Robespierre, Charlotte Corday. Day after day, the blade fell. On one occasion, Sanson reportedly executed 44 people in a single session. Charles Henri Sanson performed 2,918 executions during his career. His son Henri succeeded him. Henri's son Clément Henri was the last of the dynasty, losing the position in 1847 after pawning the guillotine to pay gambling debts. The family that had executed a king ended with a man who gambled away the blade. If your surname is Sanson, your family held the most terrifying appointment in France for 6 generations. They killed a king. They inaugurated the guillotine. They served before, during, and after a revolution that remade the Western world. And when it was over, the curse that had followed them since 1688 was finally lifted. Not by redemption, but by disgrace. 10 surnames. 10 bloodlines marked not by what they owned or where they ruled, but by what they were forced to do, and what their communities would never let them forget. The executioner's name was not chosen, it was imposed, passed from father to son like a sentence that never ended, through centuries of social exile, endogamy, and the quiet understanding that the hands holding the blade tonight would be the same hands holding it tomorrow. These families did not disappear. Their names are still on passports, on mailboxes, on school rosters in Germany, France, England, Spain, and the Americas. Most of the people carrying them have no idea what they mean. Now you do. Hit subscribe to Legacy Remains because the next video reveals something even darker. The surnames of the families who were not executioners, but their victims. Convicted, sentenced, and marked with names they could never escape.